Hello, and welcome to our podcast where the dark corners are. Hello, hello. I am Vina, and I am your Dark Travels hostess. Tonight, the gang's all here, and they're ready. They're ready to,
Oh, you ruined it. You were so excited. Just press the button, bro. Let's see it.
okay,
Did my replacement song. I've been kicked out of the band.
that's not accurate.
How you kicked me out of what is mine?
So, in our last segment together, we discussed how I was going to get the polar bear an intro song whenever he takes the lead, or it's just him and I for his episode. And so we now have his introduction. So this is actually everybody's first time hearing this, although I will say the polar bear does not seem to be too excited about it, because when I told him it was kind of like in an 80s theme, he seemed to have an issue with that, even though the 80s were the best decades ever.
That's how old you were.
Wrong.
You know how
He's
old,
an ageist.
You know how long ago that was, right?
We're not discussing how
You know
long.
how long ago that was?
I can
Answer
tell
the
you
question.
exactly how long ago
Tell me.
it was. Well, at least 34 years ago, because here I am. You're welcome, everyone.
Yay.
43
I think it
years
was-
ago.
88 was 34 and a
I
half.
think it was 40 years ago.
Okay. The point
Just to
is,
remind everybody at home.
42 or 43.
Yeah.
the
Damn.
point
Start.
is, and I just want to point this out, I am very impressed with the results.
I mean, it can't be as bad as
Well, what's his name?
pandas. So
He's polar bear.
No, the person who made it. Give a shout out.
Oh, so I found this guy on Fiverr.
Okay.
And I also want to point out that I actually wrote the badass lyrics for this.
Oh, no.
That's
Look at you. You got the special treatment.
We should have listened to this before the
Yeah, we
recording.
should have sent the
This is-
paperwork down before you sent it to him.
So
What was the username though, so people can, if they like the song,
Your image guy.
your image guy.
Yes,
Not
on
Fiverr.
Fiverr. What happened was I didn't realize when I looked at his description of the job, I didn't realize he wanted me to do the lyrics. I saw voiceover and I immediately assumed that it was he was going to provide the lyrics.
So wait, you did the lyric part?
Right. After I hired him, I got all panicky and I was like, oh, shit, what did I do? And then I kind of had a theme song
Right.
in my mind from an awesome 80s show.
Who's the boss?
That they've never seen and have no idea
Oh,
what you're
no.
talking about.
I know Michael has seen this
Full
one.
House.
The Twilight Zone.
So, are we
Twilight.
ready?
What was the show? At least tell me
No,
the
no.
show. Is it-
We're-
oh, it's gonna. Oh, I know what it is. It's gonna be Fresh Prince, bro. The
The
Fresh Prince of Snow Air, made by the polar bear.
The Fresh Prince of Polar Bear.
That's
Oh,
downright
no.
disrespectful.
All right, are we ready?
Here it comes.
I don't know.
They're just waiting for this to be an epic fail.
Because we're just gonna start laughing regardless whether it's good or bad, and you're gonna feel bad, and then we're gonna feel bad,
Just-
but then I'm gonna laugh again.
Just know that these lyrics are awesome, and I thought of you
Now you're just stroking your own self.
in my heart when I wrote them.
You're making me all blush and embarrassed.
Well, because we know that the polar bear is the favorite bear.
Yeah.
Like, we
Out of
know
all the
this.
bears here,
And we have Panda over here complaining that he doesn't have his song is being usurped by the polar bear. I don't even have a song. So what are you crying about?
you want what song can you have?
I'm sure it's not going to be handwritten by
The
Vina.
mic-
She's going to know better.
Sam. Just do a chameleon
Kelly,
song.
Kelly, Kelly, Kelly,
The
Kelly,
Halloween
Kelly,
theme
Kelly,
song.
Kelly.
What is that one? Sam
The
The
Lama
Halloween,
Bobema?
the slasher song when he's
Oh,
chasing
I
everybody.
don't
know. There's gonna be Sam.
Never mind. I don't want a song.
Okay.
All of a sudden.
All right. Are we ready?
All right, well, I don't think we have a choice. You're the one with the buttons. So.
Let's do it.
I'm
All
like,
right.
just play it or we're going to keep talking.
Okay.
Yeah, we've
Tonight,
already
we
done
are
it.
joined
all right.
by the polar bear.
So, yes, on a count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
In 1995, a team of paranormal travel podcasters found an abandoned cub in the haunted Arctic. After some kick-ass paranormal training and his first alien kill, he was ready. So, if ghosts, serial killers, or monsters in the dark got you scared, don't hesitate to call the polar bear. The polar bear.
That was pretty cool.
That was intense.
That was actually way better.
That was kind of cool.
That was actually really
That's
good.
alright.
Yeah, do you feel really
I
bad
thought-
that it's like 7 times as long as yours?
Yeah, those.
I
those
don't feel
really
that
long.
bad.
Road trip with the panda. Done.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't do the yeah. I forgot.
I do the yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, you do the,
not to rain on your parade. I was the entire time at the end there. I was waiting for a big roar. Just.
Oh, that would
Yeah.
be kind of cool. But I think everything else was done really well.
I-
And you know what the show was, though?
Huh.
Do you know what the show was?
No.
You know what the show was? It's the A-Team.
Goddamn right it was the
it's the
A-Team.
A-Team.
Well, it's the Polar Bear team now.
Right? I'd like
PB
to think that
80s.
I'm just saying
American
because a
song is?
lot of
Team America's theme.
Team
song. You
America's
think it's
theme.
Team America's theme
It's
song?
80. That's 80s theme. That's not 80s.
Right?
Jesus
America,
Christ.
fuck
Fuck
yeah.
okay.
We were the ones that found him since you all are too young. We could have
I found him in
him.
me. So
Oh my god. Why?
we're trying to save the polar bears.
All right, Polar Bear, final thoughts on your new intro.
That was all right. That was better than I thought it was.
Yeah,
It was
I
good.
expected a rap to come at the end there. I was like, this is gonna be super long. I was like, oh shit, here it comes.
Do you want
But
to hear it again, or are you good?
no,
We
Okay.
can, no, we can do it again.
listen to your own time.
All right, well, thank you. It's been an hour, so now
it-
we
Yeah,
have
I
to
know.
go.
It's 8 minutes. We don't normally have our intro this long, but okay.
Is it on Spotify? Download
It is now.
Just walk into every room. Pop, 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 pop.
Before he walks in, he's like, cue my music, Michael.
Do it at work on the PA system.
Release the doves.
Next, he's going to want fireworks. You created a monster.
Okay.
That went right to my ego.
Did
right
it?
to the dome.
Yeah, he's gonna take
I
a
think
show.
it was pretty
He's gonna
awesome.
show his wife
I'm
now.
not gonna lie. I was impressed with this guy.
Babe, I got my own theme song. Where's your song?
I have to give you credit. That story is legit, though. It was cool. It was very fun and creative. I liked it.
Yeah, it was cool.
Thank you.
It was better than I thought it was gonna be a rap. I thought it was gonna be Fresh Prince. And I was like, this is gonna be rough. It's how my life got turned upside down.
She got a dog from me, and then I was forced to come.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. For our real topic today, we are actually here to discuss haunted prison.
Yeah.
And so to kick us off with this
Ooh.
topic
Stio.
is
Right. Well, either way, this was Polar Bear's. Just put Polar more on the spot. This was his idea in the first place.
correct. This was his topic.
Yeah.
He's our shining star, if
That's
you can't
right.
tell by
I
that
got a
intro.
theme song and
Well,
it
I
was
was-
all my idea.
I was kind of curious about it. I was like, the only one I know is Alcatraz, and then I guess you said not to do another one, which was the Pennsylvania State one.
Correct.
Well, it was the Eastern
Penn State.
Penn State, yeah.
Right.
So, to be fair, I forgot about that text, and I started researching it. I was like, "Oh, this is pretty cool." And then I was like, "Hold on, what if someone else is already doing this?"
Which is literally what the text said. Carry
right.
on.
So don't do this. So on my little notes, it's scratched out there. It's like, "Oh, don't do that." So
You got
So
that.
which jail or prison did you go with?
I went with the Missouri State Penitentiary.
Okay.
No one did that, right?
No, I'm just kidding.
Uh,
All right, yeah, so Missouri State Penitentiary. It opened in 1836 and was closed in 2004. It's in Jefferson City, Missouri, as you would guess. It's just a prison that started off with a measly 15 inmates and one guard on duty at a time, and it would grow to be one of the largest and most quote-unquote successful prisons in the U.S. had to offer.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
It's
Mine
just
also
15
opened at
inmates.
the same time.
Yeah?
So apparently they were just popping prisons up
Yeah.
all over the place at that
Now they're
time.
just closing them all now.
Mm-hmm.
As the prison grew, it would become a vast hub for the growing city of Jefferson City. Because with the prison comes businesses for the guards, and inmate families want to come visit. I mean, it was a little harsher back then, so I guess I wouldn't say that. But mostly for the guards but it brings businesses, And then,
Well, I
shit,
mean,
fucking
then
mess.
you gotta feed the inmates. You gotta
Yeah, you got to build food and
okay. I mean, it doesn't just start
Clothing.
up a prison. Yeah, it starts up a whole society of jobs.
right. Well, that's what happens is that the businesses end up going to the prison and asking for help, with products. So some of the products that would come out of it, making it the state's largest producer, was the prison itself, and they would make at the time make saddles, shoes, and even wagons. At the time, as it went on, it would change to different products, but like wagon was a big one, and saddle. It was the biggest saddle manufacturer in the United States for a minute,
Okay.
but because of the inmates. It was
So you gave the inmates something to do.
right, and so what would happen is next to nothing labor costs, and then the inmates would do something as long as everything was running well. But if it didn't run well because of the riots or assaults and everything else, they would lose production, and then the community would get upset with the prison, be like, "What's going on? Where's our stuff?" They're like, they're fighting, they're killing each other.
Right.
I
We
know.
had to lock them down. They went to timeout.
So then the prison would get money. So it was just like, a cycle of feeding off each other. By 1932, Missouri State Pen would house an estimated 5,200 inmates, thus making it the largest populated prison at the time, and even considered, quote unquote, once again, the most successful.
Did they have room for all those inmates?
Yes.
Okay.
So like I said, it started off small, but it grows and grows. And even at one point, when they expanded, they tried to make a yard, so like a yard for them to go outside and do whatever, for a segregated part of the prison, which people who were really bad, they get put there for, it's like the jail in the jail. They made a yard. They actually discovered an old cell block in the ground from 1836, I believe, like when it first opened up. Like they just somehow covered that back up and forgot all about it. They're like, oh shit, there's a whole cell block down here. So they left it alone and didn't make the yard, and they just keep it down for tourism. So
So you can still go and visit that and see it.
correct.
That's
Well,
pretty
not right
cool.
now. It's actually under construction right now.
Hmm.
So
I'm like, can you just look? Is it like a Pearl Harbor thing where you just like look down at it?
so yeah,
Or
so
did they excavate
they were
it?
digging and they hit something solid. They're like, there should be nothing here. And then when they dug around and they found these cells that were just never unearthed, they just like, what the fuck is this doing here? And they were just kind of shrugged their shoulders and go, I don't know.
Right.
So there was no record of them.
Right, because it's actually from before the Civil War and everything. So I don't know what happened. There's no record of why that was even there, but they were there. So they don't know what happened there. Most of them are caved in, and most of them are even sealed off by walls. So they don't know what happened in there.
For the record, I meant just as tourism. Like, how do they show it off now as a tourist
Oh, so
trap?
you would walk down there before you would just walk up. You could walk up to it, like get up real close to like you would get to a door and everything.
Gotcha.
And it wasn't always strictly a male prison. Missouri State even owns the only female recorded gas execution in the United States. Bonnie B. Hetty, who was executed side by side with her boyfriend at the time in 1953. I wrote that wrong. 53.
Tell me you know what she did.
She and her boyfriend kidnapped this child of this wealthy family and demanded the largest ransom at the time, which was $600,000. And they got the ransom money and they ran off with it. But unfortunately for the family, they actually had murdered the child before running off with the money. So they murdered the child, but then they were caught and they used a lot of money to escape and keep running, run away. But they never found the full amount, and the kid died. So it's also one of the only times a boyfriend and girlfriend were executed simultaneously.
And you know what the famous family is named? What was her last name?
Her last name was
What did you say?
Hetty, Heady. I think it's like Wells.
I was just curious if it was the other.
Well, there was 4 females executed by whatever in the prison system.
Well, one of them was one of the women that they believe were part of the conspiracy to assassinate Abraham Lincoln.
Yes,
But that was not in the state of Missouri.
sure.
It was the Greenlease kid.
Greenlease.
So it's haunted now.
I'm just getting more history about it.
Okay, sorry.
Because there's other notable
She's
prisoners.
just wanting more of the foreplay. She
No,
wants
no,
to
no,
act.
no. I mean, that's great. That's great. Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'll just skip to the ghost
No,
part,
no.
bros.
No, go ahead.
I'm
Well,
interrogating
well,
him.
Because
You're
there's
skipping him ahead.
information in here that I think I did
That's
one guy.
exactly
I did one
why I have
inmate.
4 pages. Go ahead.
Right. So other notable prisoners that were also incarcerated, such as 2 widely known at the time females known as Katie Richards O'Hare and Emma Goldman. Now, we don't know who they are today, but I didn't know who they were either. But I researched a little more. So O'Hara was part of a socialist labor party and would protest World War I. It was advocate for reforming the working class. So she would stand up to the Socialist Party, and she was tried for espionage.
Because
She spoke out against the war and advocating for everyone to rebel the war and work for the working class man.
Right.
So they put her in prison, and while she was there, she met Miss Goldman. Goldman was also considered an international, quote-unquote, anarchist and a feminist who fought for the hardships of women, the topics of Planned Parenthood, such as opening one of, if not the first, birth control clinics in New York. While they were in prison together, they would rally the women up and say, we demand better, we need better in prison, causing a lot of havoc and problems for the guards.
So basically, they're considered agitators.
Correct, by the government, and the man above is putting them down, even though these women were fighting for their own rights.
Fighting for rights we have right now.
Right,
I mean,
so
are
these would be
people-
considered some of the grandmothers
right.
of some movements. So, I mean, I would have never known who they are unless I did this topic, so just things that kind of get brushed aside. O'Hara would be pardoned by the president, Calvin Coolidge at the time, and spend her days in California reforming the correctional system because she wrote a book on penology and helped create the system we have now. So, which is kind of weird. She only spent a year. She was sentenced, they were both sentenced for 5 years, but she only did a year and then was pardoned by the president himself. So,
She was protesting against World War One then,
correct.
if
So,
Coolidge was the president.
yes. Once they both released at their own respected times, once they both released, Goldman being released and deported back to Russia because she's an international anarchist. She's not from America. She got kicked out as soon as she basically
They
was
walked
released.
her to the
Walked her to the boat and said, bye,
right.
Das Vidania.
Later.
And then, so they both released at their respective times. The guards drew relief that they had been gone. On the male spectrum, there were two men, one of them being Sonny Liston. Sonny Liston learned how to box in state prison, eventually was helped by the guards to parole and continue boxing, and would continue to be considered one of the best heavyweights of all time until being dethroned by the rising star named Cassius Clay.
Oh.
Who would
Yeah, Muhammad
also
Ali.
be known as Muhammad Ali.
Ali. So yeah, and then that too, like Sonny Liston, he was put there for armed robbery, and then he gets to prison, and the guards just kind of saw the potential in fighting, I guess, and they helped him.
When you say potential in fighting, are we talking in
Well,
internal
he was-
boxing, illegal
he
boxing?
he was a hothead, and so he was illiterate. He had like many brothers, and they didn't really have a lot of time for education or anything for him, I guess. And they just saw some sort of potential with him from his fights, I guess, in prison. So they really promoted him going up, and then he allegedly got mixed in with some gangsters or mobs or whatever to help to
Promote him.
promote him. So, but I mean, he ends up being one of the best of all time, and he was a heavyweight champion of the world until Muhammad Ali comes along, like 2 years out. So he gets to hold on to the title for like 2 years before.
And did they fight each other?
Yeah, so they fought. So Muhammad Ali came up at age 22, and Liston was already kind of seasoned, but he was pretty much in his prime, being the heavyweight champion of the world. And then Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali, beats him in that fight.
Okay.
And then the next fight they have was like one of the most. You think something's rigged?
Oh.
Right.
We know
rigged-
something's. Well, yeah,
rigged,
they
right.
claim it's rigged because it has quote unquote the phantom punch.
hmm
So they say there's a punch. There's a picture out there where Muhammad Ali punches Sonny Liston and he goes down and then doesn't even make contact and stuff. So everyone thinks the fight was rigged. And then that's the downfall of Sonny Liston's career towards the end there. So it didn't really make much of a difference.
To your question earlier, there was in my particular prison, which is just as old as his, they had a dorm, so to speak, that was called the Sugar Shack, where they were doing illegal gambling, drugs, fighting, rings.
Are we talking they by the prisoners and the guards?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
Right.
It was just kind of like, I mean, obviously, there's a whole conversation right now going that, once you go into prison, you change. Like, it's a completely different world in there. So, I mean, there was going to be fighting and discontent regardless, and there's prison justice in its own right, and I'm sure that it was more prevalent back in that day. And the rules were different. So, I mean, up until...
Oh, absolutely.
Right, and up until the ACLU decided that they wanted to fight the whole tobacco thing, they were allowed to smoke in prison fairly freely, and I'm sure that the guards were betting on these fights that were going
Right.
to happen
Right.
naturally.
Well, they had programs. They did sports teams and everything like that, but it only lasts so long before someone finally fucking snaps, does whatever. And the guards aren't any better sometimes. There's no cameras. There's no...
Back then, yes, correct.
She says, and there's literal firearms in this prison of machine guns, extra weapons that some people just don't have today. So it's like, oh, okay. But, do you need something to do? Even the hole in this prison too, I'm sure that's like all of them back there where they put them in the actual hole. It's pitch dark, no toilet, no nothing. and they're there for weeks or days or even months. Guys go insane in there. They have nothing to do, and one interview even stated it's like, well, hopefully you have a button on your fucking jacket or whatever if you were lucky enough to have one, so you would flip it and go find it in the dark, so you just don't go insane. So you have something to do.
Okay.
So.
Well, and this is the time that created prison reform. Like, this is where we start to see things change. I mean, I'm sure you'll see that, talk about that in yours, but like in mine, this is the time that because of these heinous things happening that states started to review what was going on and actually started changing the laws to get us
Right.
to the prison system that
Yeah,
we're in right now.
Well,
Right.
just listening to your story, there's a lot of back history to prisons that even in my story I just found pretty compelling. I'm like, I didn't know. I did know, but I didn't it was just a lot of history connected to prisons in this country. And I don't want to say impressed, but I want to say surprised, I think.
Well, so like when you hear the word prison and you hear someone says they're from prison or was involved with prison, it makes you kind of go, oh.
Right, there is
No matter
a
what
stigma
year. Yeah, there's some sort of stigma or,
from a convict.
yeah, some credibility of some sort, to better if you're gangster or whatever you might be.
But for the haunted prison,
Well, so, right, and one more guy before.
okay.
Sorry.
Uno mas.
I swear I'll get to the ghost part, but
This
That's
is
okay. Mine's set up the same way. I have a bunch of
mine's
hand-raised
exactly the
things.
same way.
I missed him. I
I hit
sorry.
capital
Okay.
punishment. I think you couldn't delve into that. Like, you had to talk about the history of these
Right,
prisons.
And absolutely, that's what I'm
Each
saying.
all-
I'm
yeah.
impressed with how entrenched prison history is with American history.
Mhm.
And we'll talk, even mine is like, oh.
right, they're heavily involved in everything. This helped evolve Jefferson City because the only reason Jefferson City was even on the map is because Lewis and Clark kind of drove by. So that was it.
Hey, yo.
And so, I mean, if you look at the camera, or not cameras, but videos of the prison now, and I guess if you're able to visit it, because you can do tours there, the houses, there's like a hill on the wall, and then literally, like at the edge of the wall, I mean, the wall's fucking huge, but there's a house right there that could look probably into the prison. So it's like, oh. I mean, luckily it's not on anymore, but.
Right.
So, either way, the one more guy before I move on to the next parts.
to the ghosts.
Well, one more. So either way, the second notable man was named James Earl Ray. What? Don't say it. And yeah, so you know who it is, though, right?
I know exactly who
Okay.
he is.
Do you guys know who it is? You know who it is?
Well, he's Ukrainian.
Well, he took a USA test.
He's not American per our conversation earlier.
As Ray was incarcerated, he would make numerous attempts to escape until he finally succeeded in 1967. The following year, in 1968, with a bounty of $50, he is credited with the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr.
So he escaped prison
Yes.
to
He-
go kill him.
Well, no, he escaped, and then he was doing his own thing, avoiding the law. So the way he escaped was fucking weird because he had a job at a bakery, so he had a bakery in there. And so what he does is he jumps in a bread box and he takes the truck outside of prison, and then he rolls off somewhere along the Missouri River, and they don't know where. So they lose him, and then the standard bounty for a person who escapes prison was $50. So
No one was really given.
yeah, no one really cared. I mean, there was multiple attempts made from this prison. There's assaults, escape attempts. One guy literally climbed the wall without knowing there's a guard on the on the top in the tower. Just like, oh, he climbed and these walls are massive.
Right.
And so there, it says, it takes an unbearable amount of strength.
Well, and so to your question, there's a whole conspiracy theory that the government was who killed Martin Luther King Jr. to begin with. So that goes in line with having an inmate be the one that does it, and you let him out or helped him escape because that's perfect fall guy, right? Send him right back.
Believe it or not, we're not done with James Earl Ray.
Cool.
That's funny. Look at you two.
Look at us.
It's like you just.
I didn't know she was doing
Yeah.
whatever. James. I said James Earl Ray. She's about to say the spoiler alert. I was like, no, don't say it. So one more thing, because this is the notable thing about this was the 1954 riot. It was the biggest riot recorded for Missouri State Pen. So what happened was it started with two guards that were assaulted and lost their keys to inmates, and the inmates literally ran cell to cell and asked each inmate, "You want out?" And they said, "Well, yeah." Some of them didn't want to come out because, especially
Don't cost you.
even the death row guys were like, "No, if I get out and I don't make it, I'm definitely going to death row now. So I'm gonna try to fight it in here." So, sorry. So as they made it through, they were letting everybody out. But every time they would go outside, the guards on the windows and towers would open up with machine gun fire and keep them inside. So luckily, they had the weaponry back then to keep them contained inside the building. But it didn't stop them from destroying half the buildings. They would set everything ablaze, break all the windows, bust through doors with just sheer force. Like, some guards were stuck in a room and they had the keys. And they're like, give us the keys, do this and that, because it's just bars at that point. It's not like full on doors. And they're like, fuck you. So they would throw the keys away for that. None of them can grab it, but they found ways to get through the doors while the guards were trying to get the fuck out because they saw them coming. They're like, nah, it ain't worth it. So, but luckily they were able to keep the inmates inside as the inmates boarded up and made their stand in there. So they called all state officials and any available local troopers to come to Missouri State Pen, say, hey, we need to take care of this. So over 400 and some cops come by, and then they make the assembly team. They leave 100 cops outside as a last wall of defense, send the rest inside, and they meet face to face. The cops are armed with submachine guns, riot guns, everything else they can carry. And they meet, the inmates who are boarded up, and they tell them over the PA system, everyone needs to go back to their cells right now, or you'll be fired upon. And all the inmates were hooting and hollering, and then one guy peers over the fucking blockade or whatever, and then fucking BAM!
Blam.
Got him. And then it went dead silent. This is all accounts from an officer who was on the first 18 guys that went in there. He wasn't the guy who shot, but they domed this inmate, and then it just went silent. And then they all walked back to the nearest cells they can get into.
Like they were like, oh shit, they
They're
made
like,
it.
oh,
We're
shit.
good, thanks.
They're
Yeah, that
for
was
reals.
fun.
JK.
So out of all that, only 4 inmates died. One being one of the death row inmates that was in what they called the snitch cage, I think. So, and the officials state that they think that this is the real reason why the riot happened, was to cover that up. So what happened was those guys who were running around, who started the riot, they say they were alleged with a gang, and the guy at the far end of death row was the parole station, basically. So he was getting out of jail. But they didn't know that, so they asked him, hey, you want to come help? He looked nervous and scared, was like, no, I'm good. But he didn't give a reason. I mean, this is just accounts of an inmate who allegedly saw everything. But what they did was they saw him, and they couldn't get in there, so they took a sledgehammer they stole, and they busted a hole in the wall, opened the doors, and they got in there, and they ripped out his tongue and smashed his head in with a sledgehammer.
So basically, you said he was in the snitch.
Right. So he was a snitch. Well, they called him in prison a snitch. But he was an informant for whatever gang that he might have pissed off, and that's why they say they did the riot to cover it up.
So this
Kill
is
him.
like the original snitches get stitches.
Right. Because they smashed his face in with a sledgehammer. So.
Oh my god.
And back then, they didn't hold back. So that guy was fucking gone. So 4 inmates confirmed dead, one being head blown off, one being sledgehammered off, and 50 inmates that were stabbed, beaten, or shot from the gunfire from the cops. And only 4 officers were actually hurt. So luckily that was good. And then they caused a whole prison search, and they found tons and tons of weapons, and it wasn't good. It didn't look good. So I don't know why they called it the most successful prison if they found weapons and everything else. But years to come, it would be called the bloodiest 47 acres in America. That's the
Okay.
nickname Missouri got and stuck with till the end of the time. So the ghost part.
Oh, there's ghosts?
So
Sorry.
now why you were here.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, she's right. There's a history in all these prisons. They all have their own stories to tell of, who was there, what happened there. And I mean, and those are only a couple of the guys that were famously known for being there. So, I mean, there's other people there. But they do tours for this prison. It's still open for tourists, not for inmates. They say ghostly programs have come here, ghost hunters, ghost adventures. They've all come here. They do the same thing. What was that? Was it a ghost or was it something else?
Unless you're Zach Bagans and you're like, talk to me.
Yeah, don't be a bitch.
It's
Come
You
your
want to
boy.
hit someone?
It's your boy Ghost. Sorry. And inmates would repeatedly. So then a lot of activity comes from like where the holes were, like I said, in the darkness, where people would be bored and then they would go insane there. And then inmates would even reportedly run their heads at the wall for just boredom relief and or just suicidal tendencies. Rumors of the cruel guard reportedly, people have seen him roaming around the blocks that he would love to visit and physically or excessively physically beat the shit out of inmates with. So, and then they could hear
This was one guard?
Yeah, they call them the cruel guard.
Okay.
No, not they don't know who it is. They just assume they just see spectrums of him walking around, looking for someone to beat up. You can hear the moans and cries, and even laughter and whispers all through each hall, and all the cell doors and open windows. I mean, just it's basically just main ghost stuff, I guess. But there's no like main guy where it's like, oh, he was bloody and chains and everything else. Ooh,
Okay, so I had the same issue.
Yeah.
So we think, right, that ghosts are formed from this like traumatic event and this negative energy, and that's kind of what sticks. And I found the same thing. Like they're like, yeah, this is the most haunted place in the United States, and I'm like, okay, so who are the ghosts?
yeah. So there's no titles to these ghosts. They just say everywhere you go, you hear these voices, you
yeah.
hear the
You're
laughters, the cries.
accosted, right?
Yeah, and I mean, cell doors open and close by themselves, which I mean are kind of hard to do, especially with those kind of doors, because it wasn't.
They're
I
pretty
mean,
heavy.
They're
So
heavy
heavy.
for one, and most of them weren't automatic. Especially
Yeah, I
in
think there's
2004.
slides,
Yeah,
right?
there are a lot of slides or pull opens, everything else. Like you have to have some sort of effort, especially with it being old. But you can do tours there. You can even do nightly ghost tours. They have various different ones that start from range from $35 to $100, but the $100 one gets you 8 hours there.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So you can basically spend the night there, 10 to 6, and they tell you to bring your own ghost stuff, but they can actually provide you with spirit boxes and things like that.
So they're prepared.
Yeah, so they know that this is a popular spot for people to come visit, and they charge tours, and you can set up on there's a whole schedule there. There's a whole website on it, and it's even got a fucking TripAdvisor thing on it for 2022. So it's relevant, boys and girls.
It's relevant.
Jefferson City, here I
Yeah,
go.
Jefferson City, Missouri, Missouri State Penitentiary. So it's there, and you can look. You could take tours, ghost tours, regular tours. It's open.
How
All
far
right.
is Missouri from where we're going?
Not very far.
We'll look it up.
Where are you going?
We're planning a trip. We're always
Okay.
planning a trip. We never go.
I'm gonna go.
Okay, so can I plan too then?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I
It's so much fun.
Planning is more fun than going.
I guess so.
Well,
All
we have
right.
to drive there. Yes.
So I mean, if we do a little discussion on prisons, and we can't really find out, individual ghosts that haunt it because there's so much traumatic experience, and it happens. I mean, it doesn't happen often, but it kind of does. Like it's enough to like die down. It's like, oh, prison is whatever. It's boring, and they do whatever they're supposed to do, and then boom, something extreme happens.
Right.
and-
There's no
in
stats
large
until something
quantities.
happens.
Right.
Because I tried looking at like total deaths in prison and stuff like that. They don't have records for all that unless you.
Right, and chances are they don't want the records.
Well, yeah, because that would make it look bad.
Right.
And then another thing that people really don't understand unless you look into it is people assume when somebody goes to prison they just get locked up and they stay there, like
No,
in their cell,
how
and
dare
they
you.
don't go anywhere. But that's not what happens. They go to prison, but prison is its own community. The inmates have jobs, they have places to be, they have school, and even back then it wasn't like, unless you were in the hole, it wasn't like locked in your cell and rot. There was bakeries, there was laundry.
Saddling. Making saddles.
The inmates made the place run. It was like free labor kind of.
Right.
So I mean,
Well,
they're-
even now, you
they're
still
out.
have Folsom. They make license plates.
yeah, they make license plates.
There's
Def-
even a prison that makes milk.
Yeah, the federal prison, they're in their camps. They're allowed to leave by themselves most of the time. They don't even have
Oh
to
yeah.
Oh,
have a chaperone or a guard with them. They just get to go live their best lives.
State of
Yeah, come back.
California has fire camps.
Yeah.
Inmates
They fight
fight
the
your
fires.
There's
fires.
the fire camps. Yeah.
Yeah. Road trash pickup. I mean, you see
Well,
them.
vaccine clinics.
Vaccine
They're-
clinic. Yeah.
I mean, that inmate crew is critical to small prison towns because they're out everywhere. They're doing all kinds of stuff. They paint murals in the high school. They repaint the outside of the high school.
Oh yeah, they do
pick up
tons of artistic
trash.
stuff. Yeah.
They do all kinds of cool stuff.
So that's kind of like what, people that don't really look into it, they don't understand that. Like they're like, well, how did this inmate get a weapon, or how did he get out? Well, he was
Because
probably
somebody was
out.
taking a nap.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some
There's-
access there.
Yeah, there's ways.
It's hard staring at a wall
Yeah.
for 8 hours a day. I
Yeah,
bet.
I tell you
I
that.
tell you what.
So,
So,
you mentioned
way.
Department of California Corrections, and your prison is.
Huh? Oh,
Oh,
That
me?
was it.
To
She,
me?
I'm
it was
sorry.
set
To me?
up for you, bro.
I thought I was done after the
So,
theme
yeah,
song.
yeah.
Did you still need
Did
me?
you-
I did all my ghost things. He said all the ghost things for all of us. He's done.
did you hear all the bullshit I just spit out so I wouldn't have to do my research?
all the bullshit.
You got the best prison. You don't get to complain.
I did. I mean,
He's
I-
not even gonna say the most famous guy. Watch.
I checked his notes when he left. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, he better have put the right one in there,
They're
and he
fucking
did.
gonosyphilides having motherfucker.
Bumpy Johnson. Anyway, my prison is Alcatraz. In case you guys didn't figure that out by all the shit
It
talking.
was your idea. You got
yeah,
first dibs.
yeah,
So
I got dibs, which is my favorite prison. It's a good looking
out of
prison.
all the
It's
prisons I've
sitting
been
right
to,
there.
it's a very nice one. There's no inmates, allegedly.
I actually lived in the Bay Area for 4 years and not one time went to visit it. But
Really?
a person that I know, and I won't explain how I know that, works for the federal prison, and they actually get special tours at Alcatraz. So like everyone else can go buy night tours, day tours, but if you're a federal employee, you actually get like extra access, which is kind of cool. You get like a VIP pass just for being a federal employee.
Oh, you only have to. Oh, because it's a federal prison, huh?
Yeah,
It's
it's a
not a
federal-
state prison.
It's a federal prison, and it's so the feds. Statistically, in case you guys want me to go into this because I'm a nerd and I know these
There,
things.
take
No,
my
no, no,
notes.
you keep that.
Yeah.
The feds actually have the lowest death rate of most prisons, so they only have like 15 documented prisons, and 10 of which were from Alcatraz. It was a boat that capsized.
Oh,
And so deaths, when I say deaths, I mean guard deaths, not inmate deaths.
oh, okay.
I'm
Okay, I
sure
was
you'll
gonna
cover
say,
that.
That don't sound right, but okay.
No, they have the lowest guard deaths, and most of them were on a boat from Alcatraz back to the mainland, and it capsized and they died.
That's shit.
Harsh.
Shit
Really
commute.
fascinating, huh?
Imagine you forgot your fucking wallet on the boat or something. Fuck.
So,
All right, so what you got?
So yeah,
Alcatraz.
it's the
It's an island.
yeah, it's a prison. It used to be a prison. So I'll start with a little history on Alcatraz. So even before it became home of America's most notorious prisoners, the island was used by Native Americans, to gather food. And it's mostly eggs and such. So the reason it's named Alcatraz is because there was a Spaniard, whatever his name was. He named it because of the pelicans. So Alcatraz translated.
That's what a pelican is in
yeah,
Spanish.
Yeah. So yeah, because it was covered in pelicans, and the way he described it is, he actually wrote in his diary that he fired his weapon above the island, above the pelicans, and they all flew up, and it was like a dark cloud of birds, and it was just overwhelmingly.
Did they shit on him?
Possibly, I don't know. Dear diary, another.
Right when,
pelican
when
shit on
he's
my
writing
new
his
uniform.
autobiography, I'm pretty sure he didn't say, it was today, March 12th, and the pelican shit on me when I shot a fire, like a shot in the air, and they flew away.
So even before all that, the Native American people actually grew to be afraid of the island. They had their own legends of evil spirits that lived on the island. So, they would do the gathering, and some stuff would happen. So all these legends derived from, and it actually became, ironically enough, it served as banishing grounds for natives who violated the laws of the land.
Their
this
society.
Tribe. Yeah. So, which is kind of funny, because before it was even a prison, it was a prison
prison.
of sorts.
The white man came and said, "You know, it'd be nice here.
Yeah. So
We see what you're doing here. Let us expand.
We got you."
you need a little freedom over there. After a Mexican-American war, United States took it over, and it served as a military station. After realizing its strategic potential for defending San Francisco Bay, they built tall walls around the island, turning it into Fort Alcatraz. A little misfortune that happened during the construction in 1857. Construction crew was working on building a road, and there was a massive landslide that buried a bunch of the workers, two of which died under the rubble.
We're already starting off
Yeah,
bad.
rough start. After it served as a military base, it served as a military prison. In 1915, it was named Pacific Branch U.S. Disciplinary Barracks, and that was for the guys who didn't disobey the rules in prison. And during the time, so here's the well, not funny thing, but here's the thing: when it was a military prison, it was like a minimal security, so guys try to escape all the time. So during the time, there were at least 80 men who attempted escape. Of those, 62 were captured and returned back to the prison, and one may have drowned, and the fate of 17 others was unknown. And the whole reasoning behind Alcatraz being a prison, it's unescapable because of the strong currents, the ice cold water that surrounds the island. Like, even if they got past the fences and the guards and they got out there without an actual boat, it was practically impossible, which we could do a whole nother episode of Escape on Alcatraz.
Yes.
There was
Yeah, that
4 guys that
famous-
almost
yeah,
made it.
absolutely.
Or
The movie?
maybe made it. The movie?
The Great
Well,
Escape?
No.
And then there was that like Olympic swimmer that came out to test if you could even do it. I don't even
Oh,
think
I
he
don't
made
think he
it
did,
all the
yeah.
way. And fun fact, the Golden Gate Bridge is actually a breeding ground for great whites. So even if you made it, you might have gotten. Just saying,
That would have been cool.
Lunch.
Yep.
Might have been lunch.
A snack.
Jaws would have been out there eating things.
Is that related because Golden Gate Bridge is most suicides? Like a really popular spot for
It
suicides?
is a
To
really
die with the
popular
whales?
sport.
You're
Well-
like, we
well,
get
that's
one
the-
a
Dive to
week.
the
Well,
sharks.
because somebody dies and then the shark come eat him,
Yeah, I
so,
don't
so
know.
then the sharks just
I don't think they
kind
think about
of
the
wait.
circle of life.
But that's why it's so dangerous to surf up in like those surrounding areas because there's so many sharks around in there.
Well, that's terrible.
Gonna get got.
So terrifying. Laughing through my scaredness.
In 1934, this is when Alcatraz actually became a federal penitentiary in the prison that we know today. A lot of infamous criminals were incarcerated in Alcatraz prison, such as
Al Capone.
there we go.
Come
There we
on.
go.
Boy.
I knew he was
That's the
gonna say
main
it.
one.
I know. I didn't want
Al
to say it.
Capone,
Pronounce
Machine
Capone.
Yeah, Capone. Machine Gun Kelly. No, not the singer.
Right?
Robert Frank Stroud, which was his nickname was the Birdman of Alcatraz.
He's a creep.
Bumpy Johnson, and many more. These were murderers, crime bosses of the
Prohibition.
Prohibition era. Alcatraz was known to house the worst of the worst. And that's kind of what they took pride in that. They were like, this is an inescapable prison.
Right. It's almost like it's a not a tag, but like if you've been to Alcatraz, they know you were a fucking criminal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why we get tattoos now. When you're in prison, you show who you are and what you run with.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can tell them your credentials.
Well, and the federal prison system's set up a little bit differently than the state ones because they have like their camps, they have like their club beds that are super mellow and chill. Then they have like their USPs, they have FCIs.
That means
So
nothing to us.
So they have the FCIs, which are the federal correctional institutions. They're like the medium highs. Then they have the USPs, which are the United States pens, and then they have their AdMax, which is in Florence, Colorado.
Sure.
And it's like their high dog. That's where Sammy the Bull is.
Is
Like,
Yeah.
that where the killer, the
Oh, wow.
yes,
Ted
it's where all
Kaczynski?
of them went. Yes.
Ted
It's a
Kaczynski.
big, that's their big prison. That's their AdMax. And so Alcatraz was kind of seen as like their US pins. It was like a higher level
That was
because
the
it was
one.
unescapable. And so all of their big dogs, like Al Capone, even though he was only in for tax evasion, he had to go somewhere worse because people were going to break him out. He had such loyal followers across the United States. I mean, it was
Well,
insanity.
he actually started out in Penn State, Eastern Penn State,
Mhm.
and then he got his ass landed in Alcatraz. So he upped his game.
Mhm.
Well, he downgraded mentally.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
he downgraded.
The
And
syphilis did
they
him
even
in.
talk about how he was this big shot on the streets, but when he went to prison, he was like almost an exemplary inmate. Like he was doing everything he was supposed to. Yeah, he was trying to finagle some extra stuff here and there, but he was just doing his time, and he was like,
Well, actually, when he was at Eastern Penn State, he had a radio, he had a couch, he had like a room
mm-hmm,
at the Hilton.
extra, yeah.
Okay, I don't think that was the case when he got thrown into Alcatraz.
Yeah, no.
Where you can buy
Right.
people off.
Yeah, each prison's different. Each prison's got their own things going. So
But he was also the upper up that wasn't actually doing the things. I mean, it would be arguable to say that he was like the most violent. He had people that went
Did it
out and
for
did
him.
it for him. So
Yeah.
like to
well,
get
that's why
into
he could
prison
never
was
get
probably
caught.
terrifying.
Yeah, he could
right.
never get caught. So now he's in
Well,
fucking
yeah.
tax evasion.
So
Thanks to the Untouchables.
that's all That's all right here.
He's
So,
getting to that.
Yeah, we're
Anyway.
getting there. Stop
Let,
it.
us
Stop
get
talking
to
about
the
my stuff
haunted
here.
part of this story. So some believe that some of these criminals' spirits still linger there. First one I'd like to talk about is the ghost of Al Capone.
What?
What?
I don't know syphilis ghosts.
Who?
Which is, it's a kind of a funny story. So the story is that when people visit his old cell, they can see floating orbs, which is indication of paranormal.
Yeah, the spirit's
yeah,
still
I'm a
roaming.
little skeptic on all that. But another haunting experience is that when people tour the prison, they can hear the sound of banjo echo through the halls. Al Capone was famous for that. Instead of taking his recreational time with everyone else, he would ask to spend his time in the shower room to play his banjo. He claimed that he liked the acoustics there. Some speculate that reasoning behind it was that he made so many enemies in prison, it just wasn't safe for him to have recreational time with the other inmates or general population inmates.
Or you need an extra 5 for floppy purposes.
Oh
Yeah.
God. Why? I don't want to think about that.
Keep your.
He's trying to get the syphilis out.
Oh,
Trying to
God.
clog those drains.
Oh God.
So,
Oh,
well,
they didn't
as
have
his
shower shoes.
syphilis progressed, when they diagnosed him, they said that he had kind of like a mental capacity of a 12-year-old at that
That's
point.
what it
He
does. It
was-
eats away from your.
Yep.
It eats your brain away.
It's terrible.
So, my personal opinion is I think that's a bunch of bananas. Al Capone only served 4.5 years of his actual 7-year sentence at Alcatraz for tax evasion because he
He's
was
a
a mob.
12-year-old.
Yeah, he was a
That's
mob
all they could
boss,
get him
and
on.
that's really they got him for what they could.
Remember his vault? That was like a
Complete.
nothingness.
Right. Geraldo Rivera.
Oh yes, that was so good. Live on TV, and there was
Destruction.
nothing in
Self-destruction
it.
right there.
I'm sorry, are you guys too young? Do you know who?
Was
Geraldo-
that in was
What
that
the
in the
fuck?
Geraldo
80s?
Rivera.
That
Wow.
wasn't. That
That
wasn't
was
the
like one of the
Untouchables.
highlights of the 80s.
That was a big deal. That was a
It was like
moment
a 2-hour
in history.
special for a huge crash and
Wasn't
burn.
as cool as the Berlin Wall, I guess.
It was one of
Yes,
those
yeah,
moments. It
yeah.
was huge. It was so
Everybody
hyped
was
up.
crying when
So
the
what?
Berlin
So
Wall went
okay,
down.
hold on. What's this fucking vault thing
He had a vault, and so they found it after I think
in the
long
prison?
after-
Like his.
no,
No, like
a
underneath one of
personal
the buildings.
And so they went to open it, and it was a whole thing. It was live on TV. Now, mind you, that was before DVR. That was like a big deal to be live
It's
on
You
TV.
had to
Live.
watch it, yeah.
He had nothing in it.
Right.
Oh,
So we had a talk
We
show
spent all
host
that
by the
time for
name of
nothing.
Geraldo Rivera,
Mhm.
who was kind of like, I'm the guy, right?
It was a
right.
big deal.
And that pretty much ended his career.
So they were looking for it though.
They found it, and it was a lot of speculation as to what they were going to find inside.
They thought they were gonna find wealth and all this
Gold.
stuff because of tax evasion, like that he had just had all this money he was sitting on,
Mm-hmm.
and so they went to open it, and like I said, it was a big build up. It was like an hour or 2 hour long specials. They were taking all that prime time
And nothing.
and absolutely
Nada.
nothing. It's not like you could DVR, so people were taking the time out
Right.
of their lives
To
to watch
watch.
this in the moment, and it was nothing.
I mean, he got out. I don't know why they would think that he'd leave anything before he died.
Yeah, someone else has to know where it's at.
Pow,
Well, I was gonna
pow,
say you have like number one's number two. I think he had a family. Like,
Yeah,
there's
he's
no
got
way
names.
that no one didn't go hit that place up after he
Right.
got
Or, yeah.
picked up. You know,
Either more ghosts.
So yeah,
Right.
I
He's
mean,
playing with something in the bathroom,
with his banjo.
and
so
that's what he calls
It
it.
just
Oh,
makes
no.
me skeptical that even if he played the banjo and everything, but he only spent 4.5 years there at Alcatraz, and even then, a lot of his time was spent in the medical areas rather than his own cell because of his stage of syphilis, and then out to hospital type stuff. So that makes me skeptical on why his spirit would return to Alcatraz to play the banjo, unless it's like it was the most traumatic time of his life or
all
whatever.
places. Yeah.
But yeah, he served the rest of his sentence, and he ended up going home and dying.
Well, maybe his ghost is there because that's the last thing he remembers before losing his mind to syphilis.
That's actually a good thought.
It's a
I think he
very
dies in
poetic.
Like-
Florida.
It's like Anakin's space ghost, and he fucking comes back. It's the good side of him now. In the new
Not the
remastered
burnt
version.
Darth Vader.
Not the
side.
not that fucking
Okay.
eggshell
Yeah, but
motherfucker.
the original thought was really, really cool, and then you just ruined it with.
That's
Star
the
Wars.
best example I got. You got a better one?
Yep.
If I could think of one better. Eat my ass, bro. Let's go. Or
Oh,
Ghost.
No. What
Banjo
is
his ass.
happening?
So there's two more instances I like to talk about that happened in Alcatraz. So I'll try to shorten this one up. It's the Battle of Alcatraz, which I mean we can have a whole episode just on that. In short story, was a couple of inmates ganged up on the guard as he was doing a search of one of the inmates. The other one came up behind him, clocked him on the head, which was pretty poor planning back then. Took his guns, took his keys, took his baton, which now there has to be a physical barrier between a weapon and an inmate, so that can't happen. So they took guns, and there was a tower, and they actually kept an eye on the guys' routine. The guy with the big guns in the tower.
The guard's routine.
Yeah, he would have a certain route that he walked. And they actually did this as he was away, so he didn't see it happen. So then by the time they were armed, and so they went out and got the guard in the tower, and so they ended up getting the keys and the guns from there. So it was two of these inmates, and they took those two guards as hostages, and they had a plan to get more keys to get out to the yard, and it just wasn't working, so they ended up being pinned there. And so there was a whole shootout between the officers and the guards, and I think it took a couple days before they could actually get the inmates recaptured.
Really, take it back.
But yeah, in the process, 2 officers died, and I'm not sure if it was the ones that they captured or not. And then there was one officer. This kind of fucked up because they had like a SWAT team essentially go in and try to get these guys, but one of the officers died from friendly fire.
Oh no.
This is kind of
Stupid.
fucked up. Yeah, I don't know. He wasn't kneeling when he was supposed to. So 3 officers died in that shootout, and they ended up capturing those 2 inmates. I think they ended up breaking out 1 or 2 more to help them, and then they were sentenced to death by gas chamber. Fun fact: there was no gas. Nobody was ever executed at Alcatraz. There, like I seen like little things saying electric chair and gas chambers. But on the actual record, there was no death sentence going on at Alcatraz. But the paranormal part of it is throughout the years after, the guards would hear gunshots, and they would hear
Bang, bang.
commotion and gunshots, and it would get to the point where it would freak the officers out so much that they would pull their guns and they would start looking because they thought that inmates they got the guns, they
Were
were breaking
rioting
out
again.
again. Yeah. So I don't know if it was like a PTSD moment or was it new guards to where it was just, I guess it happens all the time. You hear gunshots and commotion and like, oh, I guess it's a moment that's frozen
Sounds
in
like a
time.
residual.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A residual haunting.
That was one, and then my most favorite one is we talk about the D Block, how Panda talked about the hole. They had a form of disciplinary hole there too, and it was very similar to where they lock them up, and there was one light switch, and the officers were the ones controlling it, and there was no windows, nothing to do. It was just you just sit there in darkness, and so they had these inmates there. And this guy, I couldn't find his name. He was hooting, hollering, I can't take it anymore, blah, blah, blah. And then he started yelling about glowing red eyes in the darkness. And, I mean, it's pitch black in there, so he was either hallucinating or something happened. But the guards just brushed him off, Everybody freaks out in there. They just let him go. So in the morning, they found him dead, strangled. The doctors actually said he wasn't able to do it by himself. He wasn't hanging by the
suicide.
rope. Yeah, he just had marks on his neck, and something or someone strangled him. And a lot of theories talk about like a douchebag guard just went in there and got tired of him screaming or whatever and killed him, or other theories say it was a demon or a Native American creature thing that haunts.
Came back.
Yeah.
Wendigo.
A
I do
Wendigo
like that one. That was a good one.
haunts the the halls. But funny thing about that is, next morning at count time, they did a lineup and they counted the inmates, and they had the same count that they had the day before. So they
Oh, like he
counted
was
an
still
extra
there?
person. So whether his spirit was there or whatever
Right.
it is, and it kind of those things kind of give me the chills when they count, or like there are stories of somebody doing counts, because in prison it's very, that's the most important part, is making sure all the inmates are there.
Are accounted for.
Yeah,
That's the only
and-
way
and
to do
people
it.
would go through and they count and have, I have one too many, and then they can always recall talking to some guy in the cell, and then they go there and the cell's completely empty. So that's
That's
my
cool.
hauntings. Prison's just scary. People die there, whether of their
How
own
dare you.
choice.
How dare you? Nobody dies in prison anymore.
Suicide, murder,
Or gangster shit.
gangster shit. It's just a bad juju place. So it's kind of guaranteed that it would have some ghosts and spirits and some unsolved business there.
I think that's it
100%.
exactly. All right, Samantha, what you got?
A drink of my coffee.
Oh.
I was like, I've been waiting so patiently. I'm like, okay, I control this shit now.
Yeah.
This is
Can
my
you-
turn.
Can you keep control of this shit now on the recording?
Don't
I'll-
say
I'll
that
move-
when I'm drinking.
I'll move
was-
it in the back.
It's got
Don't
coffee
Don't
all
say
over
that.
you.
Come on. Be an adult.
I'm like, all over you.
A
Okay.
T-shirt contest.
Ooh, you'd
Ooh,
like that more than
I
me,
would.
though. Because you sassy.
Because he's a boss-ass bitch. Boss-ass bitch.
It all started, eh?
Took a DNA test. Turns
I'm
out-
like, mic check. Maybe I have to make myself self-relevant. I don't have a song. I'm just, like, not the favorite.
Jeez.
God.
Vina calls me and
She's
yells at me
gonna
at
guilt
work.
trip you into making a song.
Just kidding.
How about me and Michael write a song for Sam?
Well, that'd be
Oh
fun.
no, please no, never. Once again I don't
She
want a
needs
song.
a song
I
so
changed
bad.
my mind.
Just do the group song already. Jeez.
The guy from Ghana's working on it.
Just get the. What was his name again?
Is
The
he is
image
he
body
the,
guy?
is he the
Yeah.
American guy?
No,
The
the,
one that
Ghana
did-
guy is from Ghana.
Oh, he's from Ghana.
Yes.
Oh,
It's not gonorrhea. It's Ghana. You fucking weirdo.
non-American guy.
Well, I mean, to
Oh my
clarify, when
God.
we do these mashups, are we just gonna have like the normal theme song and then like the 5 seconds for Panda and the 90 seconds for Polar Bear, and then like 3 minutes later we'll be like, and Sam's here too, and now we start.
No, I think it'll be
No.
just a group song.
Okay.
It'll be the intro song, and then the gang's all here, and cue.
The gang's
Gang
all
song.
here.
Okay, but until then,
Writers.
when are they just gonna only get their theme songs when they do a
No, we
solo
won't,
trip?
We won't. We'll wait.
Can we just stack them all?
Hopefully, by the next time we get together, we'll have the gang song.
And if we don't,
Alright.
she's gonna play his song and then my song, and then we're gonna be like, Sam's here.
That's what I want to see that and be like, okay, hold on, one more, then just like in a row to see if they flow together.
The
They won't.
panda, the polar bear, and Sam.
Yes, can we keep that? I'm into it.
That'd be fun. Actually, if you do that guy, in a world, in a green room, there was 2 bears and a bunny,
Were you,
and then out of nowhere,
In
Sam.
right? And a weird chick in a pig mask that may or may not be naked. We don't know.
There once was a chicken who befriended a bear, who found another bear.
well, I'm the
fuck.
bunny, and I started first.
Okay, we'll be your fucking slaves then, or something.
Okay, in the cult.
I was gonna say she
The
is
green
the
room
cult
cult.
leader. Oh fuck. Okay, so my topic was the West Virginia Penitentiary in Moundsville, Pennsylvania.
Ooh,
That's
Right?
not
That's
a
where
real place.
PA is. Okay, it's fine. I'm doing great today. So Moundsville Prison, which was on the United States Department of Justice list for the top 10 most violent correctional facilities, was the last stop for 998 men, some of which were executed by hanging, electrocution. Some were killed by inmates, and other ones took their own lives because they just couldn't handle life behind bars.
Prison sucks.
Yeah, I would assume that we don't want it to be a pleasant experience,
that
especially
prison only
back
had
then.
40 executions.
I mean,
fucked up.
it probably sucked then. Now it's more like a summer camp.
Yeah, we get some good ones going. So, I mean, if you want to jump ahead, we have 94 people killed here. So, this prison was open in 1863, and it was open because West Virginia seceded from Virginia to side with the Union in the North. because they had become a newly founded state, they decided to open their own prison because they had to. And they chose this place because it was close in proximity to the capital, which at the time was Welling. So this prison was also built on a 2,000-year-old sacred burial grounds for the Adena Native American tribe. So we have a lot of
Always.
theme here, right? So we have history, we have riots, we have built on burial grounds or Native
It's just
American
destined for
land.
land.
failure. It's just destined for
That's
ghosts.
kind
We're
of a
just-
standard. That's not the first person that was built on a native burial ground.
Right, we're just trying to make this place fucked up. So, along those lines, there were many violent instances that contributed to Moundsville becoming one of the most haunted places in the United States. One of the most haunted places in the United States. I felt like that was just like, bleh.
You said it again. Say it again.
No, I don't even know what I said.
Something about Moundsville.
So, there were many violent instances that contributed to Moundsville becoming one of the most haunted places in the United States. Among. Vina's gonna kill us.
Yeah,
We
I'm
have
done.
to
I'm done.
She's
keep
gonna kill
going.
you. You said it 3 times now. Whose fault is it really?
You told me to say it a
I
third
didn't
time. I was
actually
just
do it.
listening.
I'm
It's
just
the
a
same
slave.
sentence.
You take orders from a slave?
I'm easily susceptible.
Evilly.
That too.
What are we going to do today, Pinky?
Try to take over the world.
Oh no. Okay.
Same thing we do every day.
Among the 36 homicides, the murder of R.D. Wall, inmate 4467, was one of the most brutal. Wall was heading down to where the broilers were housed when he was jumped and stabbed by 3 other inmates. When they were done with their attack, he was literally butchered to pieces, and they were using dole shivs. Another contributor to the prison's haunted history was the on-site graveyard where any inmates were buried because their bodies were not claimed. So either they didn't have next of kin or their family just didn't want them. So like Wall's family just didn't want them. So they just buried them on site.
And that was common. I mean, you have a criminal family member. You don't want that. You don't want a deal. You don't want to pay for that.
Well, and you just don't want that shame. So you probably just disowned them.
Absolutely.
So between 1899 and 1949, 85 men were hung in the gallows at the penitentiary. The hangings were a public spectacle and often drew large crowds until the hangings were deemed cruel and unusual punishment in 1951, after the state reviewed a number of botched hangings, including one where an inmate was inadvertently decapitated. So this inmate was named Frank Heyer, and he had murdered his wife and was sentenced to death.
But it got the job done.
He was brought down to the gallows. There was a whole crowd of people. And when the trap door dropped, they quickly realized that they calculated incorrectly because his body dropped and his head popped off. And all of the crowd was just like, oh, fuck. So the state reviews this and they're like, well, it's cruel and unusual to do it in front of all these people. So they brought it inside and it became a thing for private invitation only. But I thought that was kind of interesting. In my undergrad, I had done research on this and it was like 24 minutes to die if you were being hanged. But that was only if your neck didn't break. Well, this guy's not only does his neck break, but his head pops off. So I mean, 30 seconds.
Well, no,
or
I
30
think that's the
seconds.
thing. If it's blink, you can still blink after because it's still trying to figure out what the fuck's going on.
Brain activity.
And the longer it blinks, I mean, it's still alive, and then it dies. But
So, because of that, in 1951, in an effort to correct the way that they carried out capital punishment, because hanging was banned, an inmate named Paul Glynn was actually asked to build an electric chair, and that chair was dubbed as Old Sparky, which is still on display today at the institution.
we gotta go see Old Sparky.
Right, so as soon as they outlaw this, Old Sparky comes into play. 9 more prisoners were executed by electrocution before the state of West Virginia outlawed capital punishment in 1965, which, like I said earlier, brought the death toll to the execution toll to 94. And had the state not banned capital punishment, I'm sure that we would have had a lot more.
Electric chair sounds so much more painful than hanging.
Did you watch The Green Mile?
Yeah, they like light on fire and stuff. It was
you
craziness.
have to water the body before you do it.
Oh yeah, the sponges and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't. Oh, at the Mob Museum in Las Vegas, they have the wall from the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, which
Yeah.
was
Yes,
Al
they do.
Capone. But they also have, I believe, the first electric chair sitting back there
I
somewhere.
I don't know if it's the first one,
But it's one of them.
There is
definitely a replica
Mm-hmm.
or the original. I don't know. They have something that looks like it.
Should
Yeah,
have sat in it.
I think it's in a glass case, or I would have.
Yeah, turn this bitch on.
Yeah, I would have been there for sure.
Roll on one.
I've
So-
seen enough Chris Angel.
Oh gosh.
I know science, magic.
I'll be fine. The prison was decommissioned in 1995 after 126 years open, and the inmates were moved to larger prisons and institutions because Moundsville was too small and it was experiencing severe overcrowding because at least 3 prisoners were sharing a 5 by 7 foot cell. And because of this close quarters and the overcrowding, it led to a 52-hour riot in 1986 where 16 officers were taken hostage and 3 inmates were tortured and killed. I didn't go as much into my riots as you guys did because I was like,
That's
yeah,
fine. No,
riots,
keep
blah,
it, yeah.
blah.
Blah,
So,
blah.
blah, blah. So the list of paranormal phenomena at this prison is long. It goes anywhere from the sighting of the Shadow Man, who I'll tell you guys more about in just a second, who was actually photographed, to EVPs of shotgun blasts and empty cartridges falling to the floor. It is also said that staff have been accosted, they have had their arms grabbed, their hair pulled, they've heard strange sounds, and they've heard lots of screaming. It's also said that you can hear the voice of the Aryan Brotherhood leader, William Red Snyder, who was stabbed 37 times in his cell. So they say that anytime you go visit the cell that he was in and killed, you can hear his voice. Or that's where you're most likely to hear his voice.
I don't know what it sounds like, so.
Right? I'm
I
like,
could
it could just
any
be a
ghost.
random
Yeah.
man that happened to be in there later.
Unless he says I'm William so-and-so.
Well, so about the Shadow Man, it was, I'm going to show you this iconic photo, but it was taken by Polly Gear, who's the co-founder of Mountaineer Ghost Paranormal Investigators. It was taken around 1:30 a.m. on May 7th, 2004, just a few hours after a severe thunderstorm. The area that I'll show you guys in this picture, and I will send it to you, I already pre-saved it to my phone so I could send it to you for Facebook. The area that you're seeing in the photo is the doorway into the cafeteria. Polly was at the north hallway walking south towards the lobby when she heard a noise from the area of the doorway that leads to the cafeteria. So she turned to look at it. As she went to investigate the sound, she turned on her light and she saw the shadowy figure of a man who looked at her before darting behind the doorframe. At that point that she saw the figure, she estimated she was about 10 feet away from him. She began to back away and dropped her light in order to ready her camera for the picture. And at an estimated 110 feet away from the figure, so she went 100 feet backwards, she managed to snap the famous photograph that has caused quite a stir in the paranormal world. So this is a picture.
You can definitely tell it's a man.
Right?
That's pretty dark for. That's the shadow is pretty dark.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. And it's very clear that it's a man. I mean, he looks a little bit taller. He's thicker.
He looks a little disheveled.
But he's broad, stocky. You could easily say that he was a guard. You could easily say that he was an inmate. It's very clear that it's a man. You can see, that he has 2 legs. He's not just an orb. It's a man, which is kind of interesting. And then I was reading something about, so my prison is also open for tours. You can still go there and do ghost tours and stay the night and whatnot. And one guy said that, one of the people that works on the tours, he said, if you don't believe that this prison is haunted, come stay for a night and you'll change your mind.
Fuck yeah. That's a fucking bro.
Well, that kind of really sounds like an itinerary. We're putting out an itinerary of all the different types
This
of.
is Pennsylvania? West Virginia?
West Virginia.
West Virginia? I would say Pennsylvania.
Sorry, I forgot to say Alcatraz is also open for visiting. In the
But
middle
I
of
don't
the
think
night.
they do overnight ghosts.
They do.
They do night tours. I
we
don't know
were
if you
gonna
can
do-
stay.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I don't think
No.
I don't know if they do overnight.
Oh,
I know they do night tours.
I was gonna do one last time. I was in San Francisco, but it was all booked out.
Sorry.
Maybe next time.
It is you have to get on that because
Let's just go to
Alcatraz
San
does book
Francisco.
out a lot.
Let's go to San Francisco.
I love San Francisco. I want to go to a Giants game.
too. Have you
It's-
ever been to the dungeon in San Francisco?
The dungeon?
Yes. Okay, so it's all about haunted history, but you kind of go into it and then it walks you through the horrific history of San Francisco, and you walk through these rooms and it's like a live play, and then you get all the way down to the bottom and you get on the Escape to Alcatraz glider, and it's like a drop thing, and you just and it's all
No.
under on the wharf. It's super cool. It's
That
right next to
sounds
Ripley's.
dope.
Dungeon.
It's
That's-
sick.
Oh, yeah, that sounds cool.
We're gonna do an episode in San Francisco.
In San Francisco, we'll just
Yeah.
go get a hotel room,
I would
record
love to go
there.
to San Francisco and spend. I mean, the problem is San Francisco because I go there for concerts and
When the sun goes down.
shows, plays and stuff. I mean, I go there and it's great, Everywhere, almost everywhere you go. You're right though. You make one wrong turn, it's like, what the fuck is this? Where the fuck?
It's gotten worse for sure.
Oh yeah.
We're from a small town, so it's not normal for us to see a security guard at Wendy's.
So we do actually have the capacity to do a live episode. So that's something to think about in the future. All right, for my prison, I'm talking Eastern Tennessee. It's called the Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary near Petros, Tennessee. Now, this area was well known for its rich coal mine. So after the Civil War, there was this huge boom in the railroad construction and a rapid expansion of the coal mining industry throughout the state of Tennessee. And as we all know, trains relied on coal to basically fuel them. So it was kind of a cycle. They're expanding the railroads, but they need the coal to make the trains go. Now, this particular area was extremely remote. And of course, the greedy ass mining companies hired a bunch of people, but built the houses and charged an exorbitant amount of rent for the coal miners that they hired. And they also brought in stores, mercantile, clothing stores. And so the miners ended up basically working for very little money because then they have to pay the exorbitant amount again to the
They
fucking...
just spend it all.
Correct.
Yeah.
At just getting food.
It's like, here's $100, but I'm gonna take 25 for a house, 25 for food.
Now you owe me $10. Thank you for coming.
So, of course, this creates a lot of friction because these guys are doing honest work, getting fucking raped in the ass by their company that they're working for. So, what they end up doing is they decide to work together and start striking in the winter because in the winter, that's when the demand for coal to heat houses and the railroads are highest. And it worked. They got, little by little, they got what they wanted until there was a new convict lease program that gave the coal mining companies a cheaper and convenient and more reliant workforce. Now, how this worked was because of the adoption of the 13th Amendment, which even though it freed the slaves, it also contained a loophole where they called it involuntary solitude, which means criminals who were punished could be used as labor.
Yeah, it's like indentured
servitude. Exactly. So, and all this, of course, happens at the end of the Civil War. Now, again, in the South, you have a lot of problems because they've lost. Their economy has collapsed. It's a shit show.
Well, and the North just straight wreaked havoc on the South.
Absolutely. Sherman alone, his march to the Atlantic alone, he burned plantations, he burned their crops, he killed their farming animals and their livelihood. So, shit's pretty bad. So crime is running rampant, and Tennessee, like a lot of other states, couldn't afford to build and maintain prisons. They couldn't afford to feed the prisoners, clothe the prisoners, shelter them. So this convict lease program really, really saves them money. They just have to loan them out.
My bad.
Well, and then to also point out that coal mining is so dangerous. So,
Absolutely.
People were getting black lung. They were dying in, mine collapses. And so, that was kind of a workforce that you didn't probably feel too guilty about sending them in there. Good Lord.
Right.
Sending them in there
dangerous.
and letting them die. So, it was kind of probably a win-win for them at the time.
Absolutely. So, literally, but in 1866, which is, we know, right after the American Civil War, Tennessee's like, we're just going to start leasing these prisoners. And they do so. And part of what happens is, in this particular area, now you have free labor coming in and taking your job. And so this causes basically what they call the Coal Creek War. You have the miners who were getting paid to do this job now fighting the inmates, fighting the guards, fighting, everybody, because that's their job.
Well, because everyone's getting fucked. Literally, the miners
the
are
coal
like,
miners
we
are,
want
yes.
better lives, and the inmates are like, well, we did something wrong, now we're here in prison. And
We
the
want
state's,
something to do.
Well, the state's just straight like, well, we don't want to pay you better, so go fuck yourselves, and we don't give a shit about you, so go die in the mines instead. And everyone's getting fucked except for the state.
Absolutely. So what ends up happening, though, because the miners kind of do a pretty efficient job fending off and fighting in these squabbles, the mining company and the state decides to send troops for protection. Well, after a while, people not only are dying on both sides, the state looks at this and goes, this is fucking getting expensive. So they realize that keeping a standing militia basically undercuts any financial advantages that they had by not building a prison and, setting up a place for them to be safe in. They're like, we're done. These convict lease contracts are expired. We're not going to do this, but we are going to go ahead and build the state's very first security prison. And guess who they use as labor to build the prison?
There you go.
The prisoners.
Dig
Right.
your own hole.
So by 1896, they've got an on-site railroad spur, and they've got a wooden prison basically built by the inmates. But inside, there's friction, there's a lot of anger and animosity, so you got ongoing violence, you have deadly mining accidents, you have chronic illness, again, black lung being one of them. Disease is running rampant. We're talking tuberculosis. We're talking typhoid. We're talking pneumonia. We're even talking syphilis, which apparently was so prevalent, like 70% of the black prisoners had syphilis.
Oh, God.
And of course, they don't provide a decent standard of medical care or treatments. And on top of everything else, the inmates were being repeatedly and routinely beaten if they underproduced hammering out the coal.
Right.
And so they're getting their ass beats. They are living in dire and dangerous health conditions. And as a result, they're dropping like flies. So, we're basically saying that the inmates are spending their days in the dark mines being told, you need to dig faster or we're going to whip you. And the guard had thick leather straps. And of course, at night, things weren't any better. They were all shoved into this wooden building and it's falling apart. And we're talking Tennessee. Tennessee can get pretty fucking cold.
And say it holds no heat.
And basically they're like, one wrong match, this whole bitch is going to go up. Now, by 1939, this penitentiary is housing 976 men when 300 was at max the capacity. So we're looking at
Three
Triple.
times as much.
correct. So the state of Tennessee is like, we just have to build a new one, and we have to make it concrete. We have to reinforce it, and we have to make sure the convicts can't break out. So they make the convicts go down to the nearby quarry and basically use the sandstone to build a new prison. Now, this new prison stands 4 stories high. It has battlements atop, and by 1934, it's literally surrounded by an 18-foot stone wall. But again, you have prisoners of different races, and racism is a big thing.
Especially in the South at that time.
1930s, and we're actually at this point in time we're hitting the Great Depression,
Never heard of her.
and so there's a lot of infighting with the inmates to the point where it's just going on for decades. Now, some of the more prevalent incidences was an incident in 1982 where 7 white inmates held guards as hostages at knife point, and they ended up getting the guards guns. And what they did is they went ahead and attacked 4 of their black rivals in their locked cells. So they basically ran up to their cells and started shooting them. 2 get killed, but the other 2 managed to survive by hiding in the corner of their rooms behind their mattresses. Now, so you have these racial tensions, and then you have some guy who in 1969
Jesus
Every
son of a
time
guy.
you tickle Polar Bear, you I can't help but laugh. You just
Sorry.
tickle.
Some guy.
this fucking guy
This
It cracks me
fucking
up when you
guy.
say
The
that.
Jesus son young guy.
I know that's her
By the
tagline.
name
Some
of-
guy.
Coming son young guy. Sorry.
Some fucking guy.
by the name of James Earl Ray
That
Oh
fucking guy.
shit!
Never heard of him.
assassinate
Oh, I know that guy.
James Part 2.
assassinate Dr. Martin Luther King. Before, in your prison, and we did not know the connection prior to this, he tries several times to bust out. And he's got a target on his back. Again, there's black people here who are like, this fucking guy. This is the fucking guy.
motherfucker, right?
So he tries several times, but he succeeds on June 10th, 1977, with him and 6 others climb over the wall using a 6-foot ladder made out of salvage piping. So I don't know how the fuck they managed to do this and hide it from the guards. Either way, the second he's gone, unlike the time he's escaped, FBI and the U.S. Marshals show up and like, fuck this, we're getting him.
Well, because now he's not a no-name inmate like
Correct.
he was in
He's
your
the
story.
fucking guy.
Yeah. So it takes them a little more than 2 days. They use hound dogs. You know, remember those old movies where...
Boo.
They
Yep.
let him out, yeah.
All red.
That's right. And they find him exhausted and buried under leaves trying to mask his scent from the hound dogs. And he doesn't make it far. It's just a couple of miles from the prison, so he doesn't get far.
Must not be any water around.
Now, again, he has a target on his back. And in 1981, 3 inmates decide to stab him 22 times.
I bet.
I'm not upset about that.
I'm gonna
Those
bet
are
right
rookie
now.
numbers.
Those rookie. I bet he fucking made it.
He does.
Yeah. Nobody fucking dies in prison, bro.
So some people actually say, yeah, you fucking killed Dr. Martin Luther King. Here you go, shank, shank, shank 22 times. But he makes it. Okay. Other people say it was all kind of a setup so that he'd get a new trial. It doesn't work that way.
I don't like that.
Either way, in 1992, because I mean, this is how long this guy keeps going, he gets out.
Yeah, because, like, holy hell, when he escapes, that's only, like, 11 years before my birthday. That just feels so much further than that.
Or it
well,
feels like it should be.
Yeah, right? And then
Yes.
now he's in the 90s. Like, that's kind of terrifying in itself. I didn't realize he lived that long, I guess.
So he leaves. He's not getting paroled. He never gets paroled.
As he shouldn't.
Correct. He leaves this particular prison in 1992, but he ends up dying in a Nashville facility in 1998. So we're talking basically 24, 25 years ago, this guy who kills Dr. Martin Luther King died. I mean, that just feels
Way too close.
correct.
Like, his transfer was 31 years ago. Like, that just feels way too close for something that feels so far away. That's really interesting.
Now, this particular state penitentiary was also called the end of the line because it just was so horrific. I mean, the people dying from disease, people dying from being beaten by the prison guards, dying from accidents in the coal mines. And again, this type of penitentiary itself operated from 1896 to 2009. So we're talking 13 years ago, 14 years ago. And it is said that James Earl Ray actually never leaves. They believe his ghost is still haunting there. Now, the cool thing about this, like all of our other ones, is that you can go on tours during the day, you can do ghost tours, but you can also do ghost hunting. And it's from like 10 to 4 or 8 to 4 in the morning. You have the whole prison to yourself. I was like, that's dope. So here are some of the things that the ghost hunters and have seen, or tourists have experienced. There's a overall sense of feeling of hopelessness, like you're empathetic to the feeling of the inmates. People have reported hearing screaming. People have reported hearing like the clanging against the bars as if they are like railing their tin cups. People have heard noises that they believe are from like the sounds of people getting hung or hanging themselves, committing suicide.
Like gurgling.
Right. There are cries and sounds for people who were getting beaten by the guards. Or there was even one case where one of the prisoners was chopped up and flushed down the toilet.
Oh, God. That takes some time. Holy
Well,
hell.
yes.
You know, it's happened recently though.
And believe it or not,
Yeah.
I mean, this place was so brutal. There was an estimation of at least one murder per week. We're not talking the prisoner dying from tuberculosis. We're talking murder.
Right.
And again, without a doubt, it's a combination of prisoners and guards.
Which, to put into context, mine was one of the top 10 most dangerous prisons, and it only had 36 homicides.
Right. So again, they're seeing apparitions, they're seeing shadows, they're hearing disembodied voices, and people have actually been physically attacked. And on top of everything else, people have reported hearing the sounds of growling. And growling in the paranormal world tends to be
Demonic.
demonic.
Nope.
So like I said, you can do ghost tours,
Nope.
and it's like you can do 12 people max for an overnight investigation for 1,500. And I mean, honestly, when I was reading this, I was like, God damn, this is my place. I would like to do this. So
I would be like, yeah, let's do this. And we'd get there, and I'd be like, no, I'm just going. I'm going to go.
That was fun.
JK, I thought I got to go.
30 seconds in and I'm gone.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm a
Guess
China.
who's not brave anymore?
Oh, I mean, never Sam. Never Sam. I don't even watch horror movies. It's ironic, however, that he comes back to this prison apparently in his ghost form, and Al Capone does. Like, what? Why would a spirit cling to, like, if they died there, I'd get it, but the fact that they would somehow go back to that place, like that's where they're
Maybe
like,
he
that's
lost
so
part of his soul when he
interesting.
got stabbed 22 times.
Maybe, yeah.
God, cut it to
Yeah,
Adam. then.
Horcrux right there.
Like Anakin did when he was fucking.
Okay.
Just kidding.
All right, so that's what we have for you tonight. On to business.
Yes, you do have a Facebook page.
Facebook.
There you go. Either way, yeah.
If you're curious or interested and would like to join,
Well,
send
yeah.
us your
I mean,
request.
you could post your own prisons. I mean, there's, there's so many prisons. The crime rate in America is one of the worst ones.
Unreal, yes.
Yeah. But I'm sure there's plenty of prisons people have visited and experienced their own traumatic or non-traumatic or eerie feeling, just experiences they've had at these places. So, I mean, you just post it, bro.
But that brings me to the topic of, if you have a topic that you would like us to one day cover, to send us an email.
Yeah, please let us know if you want us to do some more Alcatraz.
Anything, only ghosts, anything.
Yeah, escaping Alcatraz would be cool.
You want us to put a GoPro on, just run around as fast as we can? We'll do it.
Do you want us to cover people
Well-
with sexy encounters with ghosts? We're ready.
Sup, ghosts.
The next step would be video, but I don't know how far we'll get along with that.
Just got to put a camera and clean up our area.
All right, final thoughts, Samantha.
Well, I can't see out the window, and I'm low-key absolutely terrified that it's like even more of a blizzard than it was earlier. So that's all I can really think about.
Polar Bear.
I don't know. I liked it. I think everybody was really into it this time.
Yeah, I think it started off as a different topic, but then the more we looked into our prisons, and like we all said, we all found something interesting that we didn't know about our prison, whether it be some people who you didn't know, or what they did, or how it affected the community around them, and just stories that are never told unless you go to that place, and then even then it's not told because they're so old. So this is a chance for us to retell those tales, and hopefully someone else gets to hear it.
Right.
Well, and it was a cool mashup between history and paranormal.
Yeah, we
Because
might
most
have
of
to rename the episode not Haunted Prisons, but like
well, I think Haunted Prisons
Prisons.
is accurate, but I mean, it was kind of cool. Like, it was hard not to delve into the history of it.
Yeah.
So
Right.
normally we do all history, or we do, like you said, all travel or all paranormal, and this was like a mashup of all the things, which was
Right,
kind
and
of
we
neat.
did. We
there was
did-
a little
we- yeah.
crime on the back.
We
of the
told
story.
Mhm.
why it was our prison was violent, and probably the reason why it would be haunted by whoever, and what you can do, where to go, and how much what does this place offer for me to experience. You can, so you can go to these prisons
Absolutely.
and do it. And I would like to one day for any of these prisons. I mean, Alcatraz I've been to, and 3 of the 4 of us have been there. So, but I mean that's 1 out of the 4 we just told, and that's not including other prisons out there that have their own history, that have their own stories to tell.
And are closer,
Yeah,
Right.
location wise.
yeah.
All right. So until next time, only if you can find the beauty in the darkness, which is where we hope to meet you, where the dark corners are.
It just, yeah, it's me. He's so angry.
He
It's
just
okay.
wants love.
You can be part of my theme song.
Stop it.
I keep loving him and he yells at me. Yeah, I don't touch her because I'm afraid I'm going to scare her, so I just never touch her. Poor baby. Now pick this one up. No, you're fine. I picked him up earlier. You just growled at me a little. Oh, my God.
You fucking set him up for that?
Okay, bear growl now. Like, see if you can scare him back.
He sounds like,
More scared of this thing.
Oh, here. You want to talk?
You need to be quiet.
Go ahead. Tell us, Charlie. Tell us that you're mad. We're listening.
what the fuck is going on?
Okay.
Yell at him again.
Okay.
We're just talking about San Francisco.
That was enough to scare him straight.